All right, so we're trying to essentially, clean up any misunderstandings, kind of get those last minute tips in place for the AP exam next week. So we're looking at a lot of questions and answers. You guys actually submitted all these questions, I think week before last. I had to watch a lesson by Miss Knight and then ask, any other questions that you might still have about rhetorical analysis and paragraphs and stuff like that. And so here were your questions, and I wrote out some answers for you. So first question was about planning. I'm going to try to organize them together into groups so it'd be a little easier. How can I ensure my paragraph stays on track with the prompt and not going off on a tangent in the commentary? And so I think that even though this question is specifically referring to body paragraph structure, I really think this is a question about planning. Because the best way to prevent like a distraction or a lack of focus issue in your writing is to spend that extra time, that extra minute or two at the beginning, planning out how you're going to organize the idea before you write it. We have a format that we've been practicing, a topic sentence and then WP, A, and E. More on that, lots more on that through the other questions today. But I want you to try to get in the habit of taking that extra time and planning out your idea before you try to actually compose the language. I know it seems like counterintuitive maybe for some of you. Like if you're under the pressure of time and you always have a hard time finishing, you want to go. But actually, I think if you take that extra minute at the beginning and plan out what you're going to say, you might actually end up writing faster overall anyway. So I definitely think that taking, again, I'm not talking about 10 minutes here, but a minute or two to kind of plan out your idea, do some bullet points, blot out your paragraphs, I think can help with focus. How should I go about connecting the ideas of one body paragraph to the other without breaking the flow of the paper or making it sound awkward? And so I think this is part of planning too. If you want your ideas to connect, then you have to have that connection in your mind before you try to start writing it. Otherwise, it's going to seem like you're trying to throw the ideas together at the last minute, which is kind of what you're doing if you don't plan it ahead. And so if you want it to seem like it was deliberately composed to all fit together, then you need to have that bigger picture going in. Easy way to do that is to take the biggest idea you've noticed and then try to split that idea into two, more smaller but still compound parts. So like if a speaker appeals to a sense of duty throughout their work, and maybe they do that through a couple different methods, you could have different paragraphs that all deal with how they build that sense of duty. Like for instance, they could, your first paragraph could look at like the reminders to the audience to handle obligations, right? To protect others who are less capable. Maybe later they use, like a sense of national pride or something like a Hippocratic oath to try to hold their audience accountable. If you notice multiple different, strategies at different points in the writing, like beginning and end, or, middle and end or something like that. Like if a tone is shifting or an idea is growing throughout the piece, you can use that in multiple places, and that's totally okay. You're using that big, in this example, sense of duty to kind of connect all the paragraphs together, but you're still talking about individual components in the different paragraphs. How can I make a factual and relevant claim that uses intelligent diction that is able to keep my reader fully engaged? This has everything to do with your attitude and your approach to the question. If you go into this as a student, facing some kind of stupid school assignment, right? Like something that's like, I'm not even good at this anyway, I don't even want to do it, blah, blah, blah. Your writing's going to come across like you don't really want to do it. And so in terms of getting ready before the test, I think that's something that you might need to work on if that's where you are, right? You recognize you are an intelligent person, okay? You have opinions and observations that have value. This essay is a conversation where you're supposed to share those values, right? Those observations. You read something, you find something interesting and intelligent to say about it, and then your essay is how you say it, right? you want the person reading it to think of you as an intelligent person with a good observation. And so it's going to be important for you to have that belief in yourself when you go into the essay. And so, yeah, definitely, take a little time and kind of, hype yourself up a little bit. Okay. You can do it, but you have to take yourself out of the, I'm a student being forced to do something I don't want to do, mindset. If you want your writing to really kind of shine. So looking at questions about planning, in APUSH, it was suggested that we use an although format for our thesis. Is the same for our AP Lang essays. I would say if this was like for the argument question, that you could maybe do that. But it's not. It's the analysis question. And so I think you're going to need to use a different format. And so what we looked at before with open thesis and closed thesis is a rearrangement of speaker and audience, abstract, and concrete parts of the task. So I've got some examples here at the bottom. They're kind of color-coded. An open thesis is only going to discuss the abstract. Sometimes this could be an advantage in timed writing because you don't have to commit to a bunch of subpoints that you may not have time to get to. And so if you do an open thesis, you just have to be really careful and make sure that your topic sentences are really clear at outlining concrete strategies and appeals that you've recognized. Okay, so if you say something like from one of the practice ones that we did, I think 3 weeks ago, Kennedy wants steel industry tycoons to lower the cost of steel. Okay, that is kind of the purpose of his speech. Kennedy is speaking out against an action that the steel industry took when they raised prices during like a tough economic period. And so that covers enough of the task to count as a thesis. You just need to make sure that you use really strong topic sentences in that essay to make sure your whole idea is outlined really clearly. Kennedy employs nationalism and contrast to form a guilt trip so that the steel industry tycoons will lower the price of steel. That's a closed thesis. It has some subpoints, some concrete elements that you're going to discuss in the thesis. And so the advantage here is that it's very nice and compact. I've put my whole point all in one place. It's very helpful to the reader. They should know exactly where I'm going in the essay, right? The downside here is that I'm under the pressure of time, and so now I need to make sure that I adequately and effectively discuss nationalism, contrast, and the formation of a guilt trip within the essay, within the time period. And so whether you used opened or closed, there's no necessarily better one. I would say, practice both a little bit if you want. And then, when the prompt comes out, follow your instinct, see which one you feel like you have more time for. And you can go with that. But you won't be using an although, like an although format. That for argument, absolutely would, but not for analysis. So if you misinterpret the author's claim and you write something that's not in the author's line of reasoning, can you still get points despite incorrectly deciphering the author's message? And it really kind of depends on how far off you are. I don't think that it's like an absolute kind of deal where it's like they're looking for one specific response, if you didn't notice this tone, it's 0 kind of thing. You need to just approach the question with an open mind, focus on looking for that purpose, and trying to hear the message reasonably. Okay, consider the situation that the speaker and the audience is in. That we call it the occasion, right? The time and place, the stuff going on around it, to try to make your idea kind of come through more clearly. So questions about critical reading here. Could a reason I'm struggling with the analysis part be because I'm trying to analyze 2 surface level ideas, right? Diction or something instead of deeper level analysis like appeals? And like absolutely 100% yes, that could be a source of struggle. So I've put here this framework design by David Jolliffe, who's a former chief reader for the AP exam for Lang. When a speaker creates an idea, that idea develops starting at the top of this diagram at exigence, okay? And it goes through the bottom, okay? So Plato called this process rhetoric, right? Exigence is a moment of invention when someone is motivated enough to not just form an idea, but want to share it with others, okay? After exigence, the speaker will consider their audience, and they will consider their goal, their purpose, okay? We call that the rhetorical situation. The next few steps in the rhetorical canon are to consider appeals, right? The speaker is saying, how should I approach this audience with this message in an appealing way? And so that's part of their planning. Then they look at how to organize, structure, or form their idea. Should I do this in 3 parts? Should I open with a counter argument? They think ahead about how they want to organize their idea to make it easy to follow. And then they actually sit down, and the last step in rhetoric is the surface feature stuff, the actual word choice, the sentence structure, the actual style elements of the language itself. And so as a reader, you're doing this backwards. When you read, the first thing you witness is the word choice and the surface features, the imagery, the style elements, okay? And so when you're analyzing it, you have to work backwards from the bottom up. You're looking at the surface features. You can witness the organization. That's stuff that you can see. That's why it's kind of highlighted there. You have to use that observation to try and infer the appeal, right? Oh, I get it. Kennedy's trying to make them feel guilty. He's trying to turn the American people against the steel industry tycoons to put pressure on them, okay? And so you walk it back up the chain. Why would he want to do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe Kennedy's the president. It's a bad economic time. He has to look like he's doing something to make the economy better, okay? He's addressing this, right? And so you're working back up from the surface features in the speech, getting all the way back up to that exigence, okay? And so, yes, absolutely 100%. I think it's better to start your analysis by announcing or concluding the inferences that you've witnessed within the appeals level. And then when you're in your paragraphs and you're explaining, use that organization, structure, form, and those surface features to explain how and why the speaker has created those appeals and why they might be really effective at getting that result that they want from the audience, okay? The metaphor that I'm using here at the bottom of the slide, if I point to something like a car, a complex machine, and I tell you that it's the backbone of modern transportation, that's my claim, right? I'm explaining to you what a car is, and I'm telling you that it's the backbone of modern transportation, okay? And then I explain how it works by saying, look, it's got this engine inside, and this engine is made up of all these little parts, these pistons and other things, these tubes, all this pressure, that transfers power from the engine to the wheels, to the drivetrain, all this other stuff, right? And I go through the parts and I show you how all these little simple and compound systems within the car work together to make it move as a transportation engine, okay? You can follow along because you know the whole time that it's supposed to be for transportation, right? But if I start on the other way, right? If I start by saying, okay, look at this pile of bolts, pipes, belts, gaskets, all these, metal components that I have spread all over the place, I'm going to combine these together to make this thing called a car, and it's going to be the centerpiece of modern transportation, okay? That's going to be a much harder idea for you to visualize because you haven't seen how all the pieces fit together yet, okay? I'm telling you that they fit together, but it's hard. You're having to just kind of like take my word for it that they're going to work the way I tell you they will, okay? And so start at the end. Take that appeal and start there because that way your audience can see it. And then you go back and help them understand how it works by looking at that organization and those surface features to make it make sense, okay? And so this is a really big part of what you're trying to do with analysis. This was a great question.